New York Attorney General Letitia James said she will seize Donald Trump's properties if she needs to. In a new filing, her office calls Trump's request for leniency, essentially, on his $464 million bond extraordinary, saying, quote, there is nothing unusual about even billion-dollar judgments being fully bonded on appeal. And, quote, defendants object to a possible fire sale if they were to sell assets to generate cash to use as collateral for a bond or as a deposit. But the alternative would be to shift the risk of executing on defendants' illiquid assets to OAG. NBC's Dasha Burns is in West Palm Beach for us, and also with me is civil rights attorney and former Brooklyn prosecutor and MSNBC legal analyst Charles Coleman. So, Charles, hold on a second on that last quote that I read there. I want you to explain it to us in layman's terms. But first, Dasha, what is the Trump team saying about posting bond? Are they looking at other options, or might they just sit back and say, fine, try to seize my assets?
Well, the former president is not happy about this. He's frustrated and clearly concerned. And I'm not saying that as a mind reader of his. I'm saying that because he has been putting all of this out directly himself on social media, posting about this, Katie, relentlessly, saying that this is unfair, that this is a witch hunt, that he might have to sell off his, quote, great assets at a fire sale, and that this is unprecedented, right? Well, Letitia James is saying, no, it's not, and you better pay up one way or another. And this is a problem for him, not only literally financially, but also politically. We've talked about this time and again, Katie, how he has built his brand, both personally and politically, as a wealthy man, as a businessman, as a smart and savvy guy in this industry. And this challenges that and could directly impact his future and his children's future. Remember, this is not just the kind of money that would impact the former president, but his kids, his grandkids, his empire that he has built. So this is not going to be easy for them. They are looking at options. They're saying they've run out. We will see, but this is going to come to a head one way or another here, Katie.
All right, Charles, let's talk about what the Attorney General is saying. When they argue that this would shift the burden onto the Office of the Attorney General, what does that mean?
Well, basically what they're saying, Katie, is that now you're putting Letitia James in her office in a position where she has to go through the process of going through an appraisal for his properties and what their actual values are, not what he has fraudulently claimed. And then on top of that, trying to go through the mechanisms of securing buyers in order to liquidate those properties and satisfy this judgment. That is not something that typically is going to fall on the shoulders of the state attorney general's office, because in most cases, you're going to have someone who actually pays their bond. But Donald Trump can't have it both ways. He cannot claim to have this vast amount of wealth in terms of what his properties are worth, but then say that he can't satisfy this bond. So I think that Letitia James is basically trying to put pressure on the court to basically do its job and hold Donald Trump accountable in the ways that they have already done so with respect to this judgment, but also the satisfaction of this judgment, and not shift that to the Attorney General, where she will have to go through the long and protracted procedure of actually seizing control of these properties and then doing all of the things that the AG's office doesn't do. They're not a real estate agent. They don't necessarily deal in the liquidation of real property, but that's a mechanism that they would have to take in order to satisfy this judgment if the court does not force Donald Trump to do so himself.
Charles, we have a few days left before this bond is due. It's due on Monday. What's your expectation about what's going to happen between now and then?
That's a great question. I do anticipate that Donald Trump is going to find someone who is going to, at least in part, guarantee some degree of surety around this bond. I don't necessarily know whether he's going to get to the whole. I think at this point, with the interest that's accruing, we're somewhere around $462 million. I don't necessarily know that he's going to get that high, but I do expect that we will see some sort of attempt to provide some of the bond or a good portion of the bond, and see at that point whether Judge Engoron, who's the person who actually entered the judgment, heard the trial, and made the decision initially, will be inclined to allow him to somehow move forward with half of the surety bond as opposed to the entire thing. So that's really what is going to happen. And then again, to Letitia James's point, If it doesn't, if Judge Engoron decides that you must have all of the bond, which would be standard practice, then it puts her office in a very difficult position if he does not come up with the money, because now they have to go through the long process of securing these properties, seizing them, placing liens on them, and then trying to liquidate.
Charles Coleman, thank you very much. Dasha Burns, thank you as well.